How many people were earlier at the RowHammer talk? A subset, okay. I see some faces. So basically, I'm now going to talk about the infrastructure that has enabled us to do a lot of those studies and a lot of other studies that I'm not going to talk about. But I'll talk about one of the studies that Jim mentioned, abusing DRAM to actually do bitwise and or in general majority operations. It's actually fascinating that DRAM is capable of that, existing DRAM is capable of that. And we're finding more and more using this infrastructure that I don't have time to report. Okay, so this is published very recently. Basically, when we first started looking into DRAM around 2010 or so, we were interested in factors affecting its robustness and performance. And there are many factors here: timing, intercell interference, manufacturing process variation, temperature, voltage. And it's very difficult to model them in simulation or analytical. Like you mentioned latency, for example. It's very difficult to actually model it exactly without having a lot of information about stuff that we don't have necessarily. So that's why we wanted to build an infrastructure that can enable us to do experimental studies of real DRAM chips. And our real reasoning was actually to study the retention behavior, data retention behavior of DRAM cells that also Jim also mentioned earlier, to understand the variation in data retention times so that we could actually get rid of refresh as much as possible. Wouldn't it be nice if we actually got rid of DRAM refresh mostly, right? So that was the goal in the end. And we actually built an infrastructure starting in 2011. We open sourced it first in 2017, and this is the last open source. This is a significant update to that infrastructure. So basically, this allows experimental studies of real DRAM chips. And our goal was to have open source FPGA-based testing infrastructure so that we can modify the memory control as much as we want. And we wanted to make it publicly and freely available so that you can start using today. And it should be a relatively low cost. You have an FPGA board and DRAM modules, basically. So SoftMC is the one that we open sourced in 2017. Later, Google designed this LiteX tester, which is also available. So it's kind of a competitor, but we want to do something better than both of them. So what are the limitations of these existing infrastructures? Basically, these restrict various characterization experiments. I won't go into detail a lot here, but they impose some restrictions on the DDR4 interface, what you can modify over there. They're difficult to set up and use. We wanted to make it easy, especially for people who are not experts, let's say. And they have monolithic hardware design in the FPGA. So this makes extensions very difficult in general. So we wanted to get rid of these. So our goals, design goals, were flexibility, ease of use, and extensibility. We wanted to have the ability to test any possible DRAM operation, any combination of DRAM operations as well with custom timing parameters. We have a simple programming interface, C++. Actually, we have a Python front end to it also. Minimal programming effort and time, hopefully, and hopefully accessible to a wide range of users. And we wanted it to be extensible so that we, to this end, we designed in a modular way, and we had well-defined interface between the hardware modules. And this is one incarnation of DRAM Bender. It's publicly available. As I said, you can go to that GitHub page and you can download the source code as long as you have the FPGA that matches, which is actually quite a few FPGAs right now. You can test DRAM nicely and discover behavior like what we were discussing earlier. I'm going to mention a couple of them. And we're happy to support it, by the way. If you have issues with it, we're happy to provide support. And these are our experimental prototypes. You can see that we've designed all of these, and we use them for different purposes. So basically, I'm going to mention 3 case studies relatively quickly. I'm also going to mention something else later on if we have time. But basically, in this particular work, we looked at several RowHammer characteristics that were not looked at before. Interleaving pattern of activations. Basically, how do you interleave the activations to different DRAM rows makes a big difference in terms of the bit flips you get. Do you actually do it in a fine grain or coarse grain makes a big difference, and we report in the paper. Data pattern is a big problem, actually, in general in DRAM. Different data patterns lead to different failures, or more failures, or fewer failures. And we actually have much more flexibility in testing the data patterns, and we see a lot of interesting behavior. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this in-DRAM bitwise operations, which builds nicely on Juan's talk and what Jim mentioned. Basically, with this infrastructure, we're able to demonstrate that DDR4 chips, real DDR4 chips, if you violate the timing parameters, can perform AND and OR computation. So basically, all of these studies are to demonstrate that this infrastructure is relatively flexible. It supports many different types of experiments, and more than that, as we will see. So let me talk about in-DRAM bitwise operations, because I think this is fascinating. Clearly, DRAM is not designed as a computation unit. It's memory. And nobody for a long while, thought about using it as a computation unit without adding computation units, of course, right? The goal here is to exploit the inherent analog computation capability of DRAM structures. And there is such capability. The idea is that, in theory, you can activate multiple rows concurrently. This computes the bitwise majority function of data stored in those rows. I'll mention that in the next slide. I'll demonstrate it. So in DRAM Bender, we basically demonstrate that this is actually possible in a good fraction of DRAM chips. Of course, it's not completely reliable because the chip is not designed for that purpose. We're abusing the chip, if you will, we're violating the timing parameters. Okay, so let's look at the theory. We published this in 2015, and there's an Ambit paper in 2017. This is all in simulation. Basically, the circuit theory says that if you have 3 rows, and if you concurrently activate these 3 rows, what happens is they get connected to the bit line. They share their charge. I'm showing only one cell in each row. Essentially, if at least 2 of these cells are charged, you get the charge state at the end in the bit line. If at least 2 of these cells are discharged, you get the discharge state. Ignore process variation, etc. for now. This is basic circuit theory. And what this is essentially it's a bitwise majority function. And bitwise majority is beautiful. If you actually read Donald Knuth's Art of Computer Programming, one of the chapters talks about bitwise majority being a very nice fundamental function. And also, if you set C to 1, you get the OR of A and B. If you set C to 0, you get the AND of A and B. Now you have a majority and an OR. Okay, it's very simple, but we actually demonstrated that you can do a lot in this earlier paper and in Micro 2017 paper Ambit. Now, with DRAM Bender type of infrastructure, you can actually do this by violating the timing parameters. You violate the timing parameters such that you get back-to-back activates, 3 activates. And if you're lucky, you will see this bitwise AND and bitwise OR function. And that's what we see basically in our prototypes. This reports the bit error rates because, again, DRAM is not designed for this purpose. So you get some bit errors if you do it on existing DRAM chips that are not supposed to support this operation. But you can see that there is a significant fraction of segments that we tested that can support AND and OR operations with less than 10% bit error rate. So I think this is a good proof of concept for future DRAM designs that can potentially do these things.
You're violating.
Exactly, yes. And this is the code. Well, this is not the code. Sorry.
He's violating them and he's proud of it.
Yeah, we violated other timings to reduce latency also without any errors. So this is, and you probably know about that because there's a lot of margin in the latency, especially at low temperatures. Okay, so basically it's very simple source code. This is not the source code for what I just mentioned. This is the source code of our interleaving pattern of activations. You can see that it's relatively simple C++ code. Okay, there's a lot more in the paper, design details, API, detailed results for case studies and future work and improvements that we're working on or other people can build upon. So feel free to contact us on this one if you're interested. Now, let me give you a case study of other research DRAM Bender enabled. I actually use DRAM Bender a little bit liberally here because this includes all of our infrastructure. This is studies that are enabled in our research. I'm going to mention RowPress a little bit. How much time do we have? I guess we have enough time, right? Okay, yeah. So I'll balance between the 2 talks then. This is a research that DRAM Bender enabled from others. Actually, so others have been using this infrastructure to do their studies, including the most recent DRAM Bender version. So there are a lot of interesting things if you're interested looking at, you can find. For example, people have used this infrastructure, including us, to generate true random numbers in DRAM. If you violate the timing parameters, not the activation timing parameter also actually, you get some bit errors and some cells fail randomly, and these can be true random number generators. I think it's also fascinating. Okay, let me give you an example of RowPress. I mentioned this earlier, but I want to go into a little bit more detail because this infrastructure enabled us to study this effect in a very nice way. So basically, RowPress is another redisturb mechanism in DRAM. It's essentially the idea that keeping a DRAM row open for a long time causes bit flips in adjacent rows. And these bit flips do not require many activations. Only one activation is enough in some cases. I'm going to mention this in a little bit more detail. So if you look at RowHammer, you need to activate an aggressor row or 2 aggressor rows very frequently, as you can see. RowPress doesn't activate things frequently. You activate one row and you keep it open for some time. And if you do that, you can reduce the number of activations to cause bit flips by an order of magnitude. In some cases, by 2 orders of magnitude, depending on how long you keep the row open. I think this is fascinating. If you have time, I'm going to talk a little bit. So it depends. A very good question. I'm going to mention some real system studies. So here we have an FPGA-based infrastructure. We could keep it open as long as we want, right? But in real systems, some real memory controllers use adaptive open page policy. So if you keep accessing the row or page, it keeps the row open. And we actually saw that in Intel systems, in Intel Comet Lake. Yeah, okay, you probably have some too. Okay. Half an hour, okay, great, yeah.
Well, if we want to leave a gap for questions.
Sure, I think we're taking questions in the middle. Feel free to ask questions. Yeah. Okay, so basically, let me give you quickly, it won't take more than 5 minutes, and then I'll switch to the other talk, which is also interesting, but it's very different in nature. Essentially, we demonstrated using our infrastructure, and then we basically used our findings to demonstrate on a real system. And I mentioned this in a little bit, but we also provide effective solutions, which I will mention. So I've already mentioned all of this. So let's take a look at how this is different from RowHammer. So if you look at RowHammer, what you do is you keep activating some row. Oh, okay, yeah, many times. I should do it like this. Yeah, many times like this. And in most cases, you get some bit flips in physically adjacent rows. So this is breaking clearly memory isolation. It's not good for safety, security, or reliability, and this should not be happening clearly. And my RowHammer talk earlier discusses this in detail. So that we did a lot of studies in our DRAM band infrastructure and other infrastructures to test this, but we also were asking the question, are there other issues in DRAM, in particular read disturb issues, but we're also interested in other issues. So mitigations for RowHammer work assuming high activation count. They detect activation count and they assume some things about the access pattern, and based on that, they try to fix the problem. But what if there was another read disturb phenomenon that doesn't rely on this high activation count? Essentially, you have these protection, this gate over here. Can you bypass that gate that's actually put in? And essentially, RowPress enables that bypassing. Instead of using the high activation count, you increase the time the aggressor row stays open. And in some extreme cases, you get bit flips even with only one activation. You activate the row once, keep it open for 30 milliseconds, which is not allowed by any standard, JEDEC standard. But we wanted to study this, and we can study this with our FPGA-based infrastructure. That's a fundamental research. We wanted to study this to understand the limits of this effect, essentially. Then one activation is enough to cause bit flips. I think this is fascinating, basically. You don't need to do any hammering, no two activations. Okay, so this is what has enabled this, and I already mentioned this. So we tested more than 160 DRAM chips, DDR4 chips from 3 major manufacturers. You can see them over here. Our extended version actually details them. If you want to replicate these results, you can replicate them. In fact, this research, we submitted this for artifact evaluation at ISCA, and people reproduced the results, and we got the Distinguished Artifact Award also, thanks to Hao Song's efforts. Essentially, RowPress, there are 2 major takeaways, I would say. RowPress significantly amplifies DRAMs vulnerable to read disturbance, and it has a different underlying error mechanism than RowHammer. Now let's take a look at this amplification effect. So this is, these are 3 major manufacturers. This is RowHammer over here. You keep the row open a minimum amount of time defined by the JEDEC standard. This is Samsung, Hynix, and Micron, as you can see. And RowPress regime starts occurring over here as you start keeping the row open longer. So in JEDEC standard, you can keep the row open up to 70.2 microseconds because refreshes can be pulled in or pulled out because of refresh scheduling. But as I said, we also wanted to study extreme cases like 30 milliseconds. It doesn't matter if you keep the row open longer and longer, the number of activations you need to do reduces significantly. And the y-axis over here is logarithmic, as you can see. So basically, you can reduce the number of activations to induce a bit flip by 1 to 2 orders of magnitude, which makes the vulnerability much worse. And I already mentioned the ones. Okay. And different from RowHammer, this gets worse as temperature increases. And also different from RowHammer, this affects a very different set of cells compared to both RowHammer and retention failures. And also it behaves differently with access pattern changes and also bit flip direction, etc. So there are a lot of interesting things in the paper that I'm not going to talk about, but this is all enabled by the infrastructure that I just mentioned. Now, let me talk about the real system demonstration that you were getting at earlier. So we also wanted to see if we can see these bit flips on a real system, real memory control. So we used this Intel Comet Lake with a Samsung module. Samsung module has a RowHammer mitigation in it. It's not perfect, but it's not bad also, let's say, if not for security purposes, for reliability purposes, it's probably okay. So we basically wanted to have a proof of concept RowPress program, and we published this also. The idea of the program is to keep on accessing different cache blocks in a single row that's activated so that hopefully the memory controller is going to keep that row open to exploit the row locality. And that's what we see basically. In this module, we cannot induce RowHammer bit flips, as you can see over here. But if you actually keep accessing, for example, 32 cache blocks, you start getting bit flips. If you access 48 cache blocks, you get even more bit flips. 64 cache blocks within that row, you get even more cache bit flips.
But you're disabling the cache.
No, cache is everything. This is on a real system. This is a real program. You can replicate it if you're interested. We're not disabling the cache. We're basically having a program that keeps accessing the next cache block, the next cache block, next cache block. Cache is still there. Okay. Okay. Basically, when RowHammer cannot induce bit flips in a system, we can induce bit flips with the row press. That's the key takeaway. And hopefully other people will replicate it right now. So how do you avoid these row press bit flips? Current mitigation mechanisms do not take this into account, as far as we know. So we propose a method to adapt these RowHammer mitigations to also mitigate row press. And there are two mechanisms, basically. One is pulling back a little bit on this adaptive open page mode, open row mode, limit the maximum time that a row can stay open.
Which DDR5 does.
Yes, exactly. So there's some benefit to it, but there's also some downsides, like performance downsides. Yeah. And then we configure the RowHammer mitigation to account for these row press induced activation reduction, essentially. And you can read more in the paper. And we show that with low additional performance overhead, you get good results. And if you want to actually increase the row open time, you can do the second one more aggressively, let's say. Okay, there are a lot more results and analyses in the paper. I'd invite you to take a look at it. And this is also fully open sourced. You can replicate the results if you're interested. We'd be happy to help in some way. So that was a case study that I wanted to show. That was a more recent case study, which was reported in June this year. But this is the summary. DRAM vendor, it's flexible and easy to use. Source code is available, and we're happy to support it. And hopefully this will enable even more studies, ideas, and methodologies in the design of future memory systems. That's the end of my talk. You can find more information.
Do we applaud you twice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions on this while I switch to? Yes.
For your blender is basically an open source memory controller, and you can keep timing parameters on.
That's correct. Yes. You can change actually everything on, not just timing parameters, but I mean, you can do funky things like refresh, retention. You can